You have felt it, haven't you? That strange emptiness that no amount of prayer seems to fill. That gnawing sense that something essential about your own soul has been kept from you, hidden behind centuries of carefully constructed doctrine. You go to church, you read the scriptures they give you, you follow the rituals they prescribe, and yet there remains this profound disconnect between what you are told about yourself and what you somehow know to be true in the deepest chambers of your being. Tonight, I want to share with you a teaching that was deliberately suppressed, a revelation that Jesus himself spoke of to his closest disciples, a map of the human soul so complete and so transformative that early church authorities decided humanity was not ready for its power. This is not speculation or fantasy. This is the hidden architecture of your own consciousness, the 9 layers of the soul that Jesus revealed, 6 of which were systematically removed from mainstream Christian teaching because they would have given you direct access to the divine without the need for intermediaries, without the need for institutions to control your spiritual awakening. What you are about to discover will change everything you thought you knew about who you are and what you are capable of becoming. The teaching of the 9 layers begins with understanding that you are not simply a body with a soul, but rather a soul with a body. And that soul itself is not a single, simple thing, but a complex architecture of consciousness, each layer serving a specific function in your journey, from the material world back to the source of all creation. Jesus spoke of this in private to Mary Magdalene, to Thomas, to those disciples who had demonstrated they were ready for the deeper mysteries. These teachings were recorded in texts that would later be hidden, buried in the deserts of Egypt, kept away from the canonical Bible because they threatened the very foundation of ecclesiastical power. When you understand all 9 layers of your soul, you understand that you do not need a priest to reach God. You do not need a church building to experience the divine. You do not need ritual or ceremony to activate your spiritual potential. You need only to awaken each layer in succession, to bring conscious awareness to the architecture that already exists within you. The first 3 layers are the ones the Church has allowed you to know about, though even these they have presented in distorted form. The first layer is what the Gnostic texts call the nephesh, the animal soul, the part of you that governs instinct, survival, basic desires, and physical sensation. This is the layer most identified with the body itself, the consciousness that feels hunger, that seeks comfort, that reacts to danger. Every religion acknowledges this layer because it is impossible to deny. You feel it every moment of your physical existence. The second layer is the ruach, what we might call the rational soul or the thinking mind. This is the seat of logic, of personality, of the ego structure that you identify as yourself when you say the word I. This is the layer that processes information, that makes decisions, that navigates the social world. Again, the Church has acknowledged this layer because it is self-evident in human experience, though they have taught you to distrust it, to see it as corrupted by original sin, rather than as a divine tool for navigating material reality. The third layer is what the ancient texts call the neshama, the divine breath, the part of your soul that yearns for connection with something greater, that feels the pull toward transcendence, that experiences moments of awe and wonder, This is the layer that drives you to seek God, and the Church has been very happy to acknowledge this layer because it keeps you seeking through their doors, keeps you dependent on their sacraments and their authority. But here is where the hidden knowledge begins. Here is what they took from you. The fourth layer of the soul is the chaya, the living essence, the part of your consciousness that exists beyond individual identity, beyond the separation between self and other. This layer is your direct connection to the living Christ consciousness, not Christ as a historical person 2,000 years ago, but Christ as the eternal principle of awakened divinity that exists in every human being. When Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is within you, he was speaking directly about this layer. When he said you will do greater things than these, he was telling you that this layer of your soul, once activated, gives you access to the same divine power that flowed through him. The Church could not allow this teaching to spread because it would have ended their monopoly on spiritual authority. If every person can access the Christ consciousness directly through the chaya layer of their own soul, what need is there for priests, for bishops, for popes? This layer was systematically removed from Christian teaching, mentioned only in obscure mystical texts that were labeled heretical, and their authors persecuted or killed. The fifth layer is the Yechida, the unified soul, the point of absolute oneness with the divine source. This is the layer where all sense of separation dissolves, where you experience yourself not as a separate being who is connected to God, but as an expression of God itself, as God experiencing itself through the temporary form of your individual consciousness. This is what the Gnostics called gnosis, direct knowing, unmediated experience of ultimate reality. This layer terrified the early Church authorities because it rendered their entire system irrelevant. If you can experience direct union with the divine through your own inner journey, if you can know God without scripture, without tradition, without institutional guidance, then what power do the institutions hold? The teaching of the Yechida was perhaps the most dangerous of all, and so it was buried most deeply. References to it were removed from texts, teachers who spoke of it were silenced, and generations of Christians were taught that such direct union with God was impossible, was prideful, was the sin of claiming to be equal with God, when in fact it was the very purpose for which the human soul was created. Now we come to the sixth layer, and here the teaching becomes even more profound and even more threatening to orthodox authority. The sixth layer is called the Kether interface, the crown connection, the part of your soul that exists simultaneously in the material realm and in the realm of pure spirit. Imagine a bridge that exists in two worlds at once, one foot planted in time and space, the other planted in eternity. This is the layer that allows you to bring divine consciousness into material reality, to manifest spiritual truth in physical form. Jesus demonstrated this constantly in his ministry. The healings, the teachings, the ability to perceive the true nature of situations and people, all of this came from his mastery of the sixth layer. He was not doing something supernatural or magical. He was simply operating from a layer of consciousness that most humans have forgotten exists within them. The Church could not teach this because it would have revealed that the miracles of Jesus were not proofs of his unique divinity, but demonstrations of human potential, examples meant to show us what becomes possible when we activate the higher layers of our own souls. The seventh layer is the Binah channel, the understanding matrix, the part of your soul that can perceive the patterns that underlie all of reality. At this layer, you begin to see that everything is connected, that there are no accidents, that what appears as chaos from the lower layers reveals itself as perfect order from this vantage point. This is the layer from which true wisdom emerges, not the accumulated knowledge of the thinking mind, but the direct perception of how things actually are. When you operate from this layer, you can see the spiritual lessons hidden in every circumstance. You can perceive the growth opportunities in every challenge. You can understand why things happen the way they do without needing external explanations. This teaching was suppressed because it gives individuals the ability to interpret their own experience, to find meaning, without needing religious authorities to tell them what things mean. A person who has activated the seventh layer of their soul does not need a sermon to understand the spiritual significance of their life events. They can read the book of their own existence directly. The eighth layer is the Chokmah spark, the wisdom fire, the creative force that brings new realities into existence. This is the layer of your soul that is literally creating your experience moment by moment through the power of consciousness itself. At this level, you understand that you are not a victim of circumstance, not a passive recipient of whatever life brings, but an active creator, a divine artist painting reality with the brush of focused awareness. The Gnostic texts speak of this as the divine spark, the fragment of the Creator that lives within each created being, the part of God that is having the experience of being you. When Jesus taught his disciples to speak to mountains and command them to move, when he said that whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it and it will be yours. He was teaching them to activate this eighth layer, to operate from the creative consciousness that shapes reality, rather than from the reactive consciousness that merely responds to reality. This was the most carefully guarded secret of all, because once people understand that they are creators rather than creatures, that they are shaping their experience through their consciousness, rather than being shaped by external forces, the entire power structure of control through fear and dependency collapses. The ninth and final layer is what the ancient texts call the Ein Sof point, the infinite interface, the place where your individual soul touches the infinite consciousness from which all souls emerge. This is not a place you go to, but a recognition of what you have always been. At this layer, there is no teaching because there is no teacher and no student, no knowledge because there is no knower and nothing to be known, only the pure awareness that is aware of itself through infinite forms. Jesus reached this state, which is why he could say, "I and the Father are one" without blasphemy. He was not claiming to be uniquely divine. He was stating the truth of the ninth layer, the truth that every soul, when it awakens fully to its own nature, discovers itself to be an individualized expression of the one infinite consciousness. The Church could never allow this teaching because it dissolves all hierarchy, all authority, all mediation between the soul and its source. But I want you to pause here with me for just a moment, because what I have shared with you tonight is not just interesting spiritual information. This is the map of your own awakening, the instruction manual for your own transformation that has been kept from you. And I need to ask you something deeply personal. As you hear about these hidden layers of your soul, which one calls to you most strongly? Is it the fourth layer, the Christ consciousness that promises you direct access to divine power? Is it the fifth layer, the experience of absolute oneness that your heart has always yearned for? Is it the eighth layer, the creative force that could finally allow you to shape your life according to your highest vision? I want you to take a moment right now and leave a comment telling me this. You could write something like, "The seventh layer resonates with me because I have always felt there was a deeper order to things that I could not quite perceive." Or, "The fifth layer calls to me because I am tired of feeling separate from God." Your comment is not just for me. It is for all the other souls watching this who feel the same thing, who need to know they are not alone in their hunger for these hidden truths. When you share what layer speaks to you, you create a thread of connection with others on this same path, and you help the algorithm show this teaching to more people who desperately need it. So please, take a moment, scroll down, and leave your comment now. Tell me which layer of the soul you most want to awaken and why. Your voice matters in this collective awakening. Now, the question that naturally arises is this: if Jesus actually taught these 9 layers, where is the evidence? Where can we find these teachings in the historical record? The answer takes us to the dry caves of Egypt in 1945, where a collection of ancient texts was discovered buried in a sealed jar near the town of Nag Hammadi. These texts, which came to be known as the Nag Hammadi Library, contained gospels and teachings that had been hidden for over 1,600 years, preserved by monks who knew that the increasingly powerful Orthodox Church was systematically destroying any texts that contradicted the official narrative. Among these texts were the Gospel of Thomas, a collection of 114 sayings of Jesus that contain layer after layer of hidden meaning, the Gospel of Mary, which reveals Mary Magdalene as the disciple who understood Jesus most deeply and received his highest teachings, the Gospel of Philip, which explicitly discusses the mysteries of the bridal chamber and the union of the soul with its divine counterpart, and the Apocryphon of John, which lays out the entire cosmology of how consciousness descends from the infinite source into material form and how it returns through stages of awakening. In the Gospel of Thomas, saying number 70 reads, Jesus said, "If you bring forth what is within you, what you have will save you. If you do not have that within you, what you do not have within you will kill you." This is a direct reference to the 9 layers. What is within you is not just the 3 layers the Church acknowledges, but all 9 layers, the complete architecture of divine consciousness. If you bring forth these hidden layers, if you activate and integrate them, you will be saved, not in some distant heaven after death, but saved now, in this life, from ignorance, from suffering, from the illusion of separation. But if you do not have that within you, if you never awaken these layers, if you live only from the first 3 levels of soul consciousness that the Church permits you to know about, then what you do not have within you will indeed kill you spiritually, will keep you trapped in cycles of seeking and never finding, praying and never receiving, believing and never knowing. In the Gospel of Mary, there is a passage where Mary explains to the other disciples a vision she received from Jesus about how the soul ascends through different levels of reality, encountering and overcoming various powers and authorities at each level. She describes 7 levels, though the text is fragmentary, and scholars believe the full teaching may have included 9. At each level, the soul must recognize its own divine nature more fully, must claim more of its inherent power, must shed more of the illusions that bind it to limited consciousness. The other disciples are disturbed by this teaching, particularly Peter, who questions whether Jesus would really have given such profound mysteries to a woman. But Levi defends Mary, saying, "Surely the Savior knows her very well. That is why he loved her more than us." This passage reveals that even among the disciples, there was conflict about whether these deeper teachings should be shared, whether people were ready to know the full truth about the soul's divine nature and capabilities. The Gospel of Philip is even more explicit about the hidden nature of true Christianity. It states, "The Lord did everything in a mystery, a baptism and a chrism and a Eucharist and a redemption and a bridal chamber." This is not talking about church rituals. It is describing stages of soul awakening, each corresponding to the activation of a different layer of consciousness. The baptism is the awakening of the fourth layer, the first taste of something beyond ordinary awareness. The chrism is the anointing of the fifth layer, the experience of being filled with divine presence. The Eucharist is the sixth layer, the ability to take in divine consciousness as spiritual nourishment. The redemption is the seventh layer, where you are freed from the illusions that bind the soul. And the bridal chamber is the eighth and ninth layers, the mystical union where your individual consciousness merges fully with divine consciousness, where lover and beloved become one. These teachings were never meant to be merely believed. They were meant to be experienced. They were meant to provide a roadmap for the soul's journey from ignorance to enlightenment, from separation to union, from limitation to infinite potential. But the church that emerged in the centuries after Jesus made a crucial decision. They decided that these teachings were too dangerous to be widely known, that people needed to be controlled rather than empowered, that spiritual authority should be centralized rather than distributed to every awakened individual. And so they chose 3 layers and hid 6. They chose the layers that kept people dependent and hid the layers that would set people free. So how do you begin to activate these hidden layers? How do you awaken what has been sleeping in your soul for so long? The process begins with a simple recognition. You must first acknowledge that there is more to you than you have been told. You must give yourself permission to explore beyond the boundaries that were set for you by religious authorities who had their own agendas. The 4th layer, the Christ consciousness, begins to activate when you practice seeing the divine in everything and everyone, when you train yourself to look past the surface, appearance of separation, and perceive the underlying unity. Try this exercise. For the next 7 days, at least once each day, look at another person and silently say to yourself, "Christ is looking at Christ." See if you can feel the truth of that statement, the recognition that the same divine consciousness that looks through your eyes is looking through theirs. This simple practice begins to dissolve the boundaries of the isolated ego and opens the doorway to the 4th layer. The 5th layer, the unified soul, begins to activate through meditation practices that move beyond thought into pure awareness. Most meditation you have been taught is still operating at the 2nd or 3rd layer, still involves the thinking mind, trying to achieve something, still maintains the sense of a separate self who is meditating. To access the 5th layer, you must go beyond this. Sit in silence, and instead of trying to quiet your thoughts or achieve a peaceful state, Simply rest as the awareness that notices thoughts, that notices peace or agitation, that notices everything that arises. Ask yourself, who is aware? And then rest in the awareness itself, rather than in any answer the mind provides. This is the doorway to the fifth layer, where subject and object collapse into one undivided knowing. The sixth layer, the Kether interface, activates through the practice of bringing spiritual perception into ordinary life. Start by setting the intention each morning that you will perceive the spiritual dimension of everything you encounter that day. Then notice the moments when you spontaneously see beyond the surface. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and instead of anger, you suddenly see their stress, their suffering, their humanity. A tree catches your eye, and for a moment you perceive not just a physical object, but a living expression of the intelligence that is creating all things. A problem at work suddenly reveals itself not as an obstacle, but as an opportunity for growth. These moments of expanded perception are the sixth layer beginning to come online, and the more you notice and appreciate them, the more frequent and sustained they become. The seventh layer, the understanding matrix, opens when you begin to look for the patterns in your life, rather than getting lost in the content of events. Keep a journal where you record not what happened each day, but what you are learning, what themes are recurring, what the universe seems to be trying to teach you. Over time, you will begin to see that your life is not a random series of events, but a carefully orchestrated curriculum designed to awaken you to deeper and deeper levels of truth. The seventh layer is the one that allows you to read this curriculum, to see your life as the spiritual teaching that it actually is. The eighth layer, the creative consciousness, begins to activate when you start to notice the connection between your inner state and your outer circumstances. Pay attention to what you were thinking and feeling in the days or weeks before significant events occurred in your life. You will begin to see that your external reality is far more responsive to your consciousness than you have been taught. Start small. Hold a clear intention for something minor, and notice how reality seems to arrange itself to bring that about. As you build confidence in your creative capacity, you can work with increasingly significant intentions. This is not positive thinking or wishful fantasy. This is learning to operate from the layer of your soul that is actually creating your experience moment by moment. The ninth layer cannot be activated through any technique because it is already what you are. The recognition of the ninth layer comes when all the other layers have been sufficiently awakened that the illusion of separation, finally, completely collapses. You realize that you have never been separate from the infinite consciousness, that all the seeking was the infinite seeking itself, that all the awakening was the infinite awakening to itself through the temporary form of your individual life. This recognition cannot be forced or manufactured. It arises naturally, spontaneously, when the soul has completed its journey through all the other layers. Your only task is to keep walking the path, keep activating each layer as it presents itself. Trust that the unfolding is happening exactly as it needs to. Here is what the Church does not want you to understand. You are not broken. You are not fallen. You do not need to be saved from some original sin that stained your soul before you were even born. What you need is to be awakened to what you already are, to remember what you have temporarily forgotten, to reclaim the layers of consciousness that are your birthright as a human being created in the image of the divine. The 9 layers are not something you need to acquire or achieve. They are already present, already functioning, already the truth of your being. They have simply been sleeping, waiting for you to remember them, to turn your attention toward them, to give yourself permission to explore them. And now you know. Now you cannot unknow. Now you have the map that was hidden from you. The question is, what will you do with it? I want to leave you tonight with a challenge and an invitation. The challenge is this. Choose one of the practices I have shared for activating the hidden layers and commit to it for the next 30 days. Not because I am telling you to, not because some authority demands it, but because you feel the truth of what has been shared here, and you recognize that your soul is calling you to this awakening. Just one practice, done consistently for 30 days, will begin to open doorways in your consciousness that have been closed for lifetimes. You will start to experience yourself differently. You will start to see reality differently. You will start to access capacities you did not know you had. And the invitation is this. Share what you discover. Come back to this space and tell others what you are experiencing as you activate these layers. Your testimony will light the way for others. Your courage to explore beyond the approved boundaries will give others permission to do the same. We are witnessing a collective awakening on this planet, a mass remembering of the full architecture of human consciousness. You are not separate from that awakening. You are an essential part of it. If what you have heard tonight resonates with the deepest truth of your being, if you feel that recognition of something you have always known but could not name, then I invite you to subscribe to this channel. This is not just another spiritual content feed. This is a growing community of souls who are committed to the journey beyond religious limitation, who are brave enough to explore the hidden teachings, who are ready to activate the full 9 layers of consciousness. In the description, you will find additional resources, texts to study, practices to explore, tools to support your awakening. And please, share this teaching with others who you know are hungry for this level of truth. The suppression only continues if we stay silent. The awakening accelerates when we speak what we know. You have been lied to about who you are and what you are capable of. But now you know the truth. Jesus revealed 9 layers. The church hid 6. You have all 9. The only question is whether you will choose to awaken them. The journey begins now, and you do not walk it alone. Blessings on your path.